um, create even more of a problem. So, for example, if I have a dog that is growling when approached by another dog in his comfortable space, whether that's his crate on a bed or things of that nature, that dog kind of has the right to say, I don't want to be bothered by you right now. And as long as the growl is communication and not an absolute outburst, then I tend to let that go, and I actually address the dog that has done the approach. So I want one dog to be able to say to the other, you need to go away and leave me alone, and for the other dog to recognize that that makes sense to them. If that leads to an altercation and it's, you know, too much emphasis on the growl and it becomes an explosion, then yes, we have to figure out what that behavior is rooted in and how we're going to help the dog understand that there's no threat from the other dog approaching and that he needs to learn to make smarter, better decisions. I do that through a really solid foundation in obedience, but also in a lot of duration work, a lot of state of mind, creating calmness, and making sure that they can exist together first before they're in each other's spatial, in each other's space, because spatial pressure can be too much. So I'm looking for the threshold of tolerance, whether that's across the room or side by side, and how I can get them to understand and start to share space together without blowing up at each other. So again, dog on a bed has the right to communicate, I don't want to be bugged right now. Now, if the dog is approaching the, let's say the dog on the bed has a bone, and the one that does the approaching comes and growls, saying, I want you to give up that bone, then that's the one I'm going to be addressing in the communication. So when they can't talk to each other properly, I need to be the one to intervene and make sure that I'm helping them communicate clear expectations, which is why supervision of the dogs together is really quite essential. This happens more often or not when you're trying to introduce new dogs together, or you know, two dogs are coming together in the pack and maybe they haven't built a relationship of trust for each other yet. So supervision is critical, and my intervention may be necessary. But be aware that at any given time in the future, something could change, whether it's the dynamics in the house, stress level in the house, the people are potentially stressed out, anxious, unhappy, and the dogs start to feel a shift in energy. That could shift how their relationship with each other is as well. Age could be a factor, pain could be a factor, so their health and well-being can be critical to that as well. So it's always important that we are aware of the relationships with the dogs and supervising as much as we can. Does anybody have any questions about anything? I'll give you a pause for a second. If you're out there on Periscope, thanks. This is really the second time that I've tried to do an interactive one. And we're going to be doing more of the teaching skills that we do with our board and train clients in the near future. I wished I had had it on yesterday. We had two dogs that are known to be dog aggressive out in the social yard. We had them muzzled up because I predicted there was going to be a bit of an altercation, and there was. So it was interesting, though. It was not the one that I expected to start the incident, is the one that actually started it. And so, again, they were muzzled. Everybody was safe, and we separated the two. What most people do when there is an altercation between dogs is they separate and isolate. They're like, oh my God, they can't ever be together. They hate each other, and I'm going to banish one to a crate, and they can only beat out one at a time. That's the opposite of what I do, as long as I can make sure that we're creating safety measures for the dogs and the humans that are involved in that. So when that altercation happened, we separated them, and both dogs were put into a downstay side by side. And what we were looking for there is for them to actually let go of any stress, any anxiety, any intent to kind of re-engage into that altercation again. And that probably took us about 20 minutes of just sitting there. We were not physically restraining the dogs. That started initially with just a little hand on the shoulder to say, we're not going to let you get back up. But the goal then became for them to do it themselves. And so we were nearby. There was a trainer with each dog. They probably had 2 feet between them, and we were on either side. And we wanted them to do the work themselves. So we sat there until all that panting, all that stress, all that anxiety, and sort of negative energy that was brewing ended. Then we released them, and the pack went back to the socialization time. Shortly thereafter, I did put them in their crates for a little bit of rest. We brought them back together twice a day, still muzzled up, and we had a little bit of inappropriate posturing, which we separated very early, and we're trying to teach them to make better decisions together. And tomorrow, if things go well, we are going to try them off muzzle. They'll both be leashed up at that time instead of more freedom like they had yesterday and today, but we're going to start trying to bring them together with a little more interaction. The muzzle can actually create some behavior changes itself. It creates a restriction for them, so they're not always their most natural personality, because they're like, why is this foreign object on my face? And so we want to start to try and loosen that up a little bit, making sure that we're keeping safety protocols in check. So I'll pause there and ask if you have questions about any of that. I need to move my periscope. I feel like I'm making the YouTube video. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. Anybody on Periscope have questions? Say hi. Tell me where you're from. Do that. Okay. Well, I'll take one more topic, and if there are no questions, we'll wrap it up shortly after that. The other topic that I want to talk about is using food during training. I'm going to write a blog article about this because I think there is a fair amount of detail that needs to be included in how we use this in certain situations. So one of the things that we really focus on is trying to figure out the reward that's going to be valuable to the dog. For many of them, that's food. Every dog needs to eat. For some of them, it's a toy. For some of them, it's just play and enthusiasm from us. But we want the dogs here that are here for our board and train, especially those that have behavioral issues, working for their food. So we offer food by asking for one of the training commands that we are working on. And if they deliver that command, then they're given some of their meal. And we try to work through the entire meal in a work for food format. If they don't want to work for food, then they're probably going to go back in their crate, rest a little while longer, and come back out a little later and try it again. We're trying to build drive, build motivation, build enthusiasm for them to want to work, to need to work. And once we have that relationship, then we often start unlocking the things that cause the dog to have the behavior problems in the first place. Once we get that motivation built, then we start looking to make sure that we're teaching. And on the obedience side of things, we are looking to start weaning off those rewards in a variable way. We don't ever want to eliminate it 100%. It's like going to work and not getting a paycheck. I wouldn't do that, and I don't think any of you would either. But we want to offer the food. Once we know they know the skill, then we'll start to vary when that reward shows up and how much. So it sometimes, when we first start teaching, they'll get a few kibble for each success, for every success. And then we will start varying that. It may be every other success or every third success. It may be every, we might go back to one-to-one for a little bit. We might vary again. And if they do something exceptionally well, whether that's speed or accuracy of the command in its placement or whatever that may be, there might be a jackpot, meaning they get a whole handful of stuff. And so the variance of that becomes important to the dog. There's studies been done that say the dog actually learns to anticipate the reward. When you pair that with a marker like good or yes to let the dog know they've gotten it right, suddenly that marker takes on greater value. So even in the absence of a reward for that particular instance, they still got a payoff, if you will. So you don't ever want to eliminate the reward altogether. You want to keep the hope of reward showing up and make sure that you are having the dog work for something, having the dog understand that there's value in doing this, and more often than not, it's his kibble, it's daily kibble, and once in a while there'll be a really great treat associated with that. I might use higher value food reward, higher value treats if I'm working with a dog that has some fear or anxiety or trust issues. But if I'm working with a dog that has a really negative attitude like aggression, I am more likely to make them work only for their food and no really yummy surprises show up until they really start building a better relationship with us. So with that, I know there's not a lot of people left on Periscope or YouTube, and that's okay. We're going to get these things motivated. Like I said, I think I'm probably going to have to boost some ads on Facebook so that people know we're doing this. But I appreciate those of you who popped in, and have a great day.